Hey everyone, it's Murray, and this past weekend I flew out to Maryland to compete in the RBET with Gladiator Beast. The event was awesome, awesome tournament, awesome people. Everything else, um, yeah, not so much, but that's a different story, right? And then, as far as my personal record, I ended up going X2 pretty early, and even if I won out, I still would have finished in 20 some place. And yeah, it wasn't worth it. So I dropped just due to some really unfortunate games. Other than that, I still believe the deck is probably the best it's ever been. I really like this a lot. And I'm excited to show it to you guys. So let's go ahead and get started. I am playing 2 Laquari, 1 Darius, 2 Equest, 2 Sam Knight. I think only having one of these is really playing with fire. It happens so often where you'll draw Sam Knight, sometimes with the Rescue Cat. You'll need to summon it, and if it gets met with removal, you now have a cat you can't play. Makes the engine almost not worth it at that point. I like playing 2 Sam Knight as insurance, and I like playing the second copy over something like Arabellum, which isn't a GB, or even Test Tape. Even though Test Tape does get you to a GB, it itself is not one, so you can't contact fuse with it, you can't make your Tiger and Chariot plays live. I like having second Sam Knight, personally. Bestiari, 2 Retiari. I think 2 Retiari is fantastic. I've been preaching this since February. It's so well positioned in the meta right now because the whole meta is built around Vayus, Miracle Fusions, Frogs. Decks like Amaryllis and Lightsworn are very popular. So Retiari just completes, it just keeps all that in check. So huge fan of it. Mermello, Homplimus, Rescue Cat, 3 Test Tigers, and 1 Hedgeguard. I'm still in the Hedgeguard tech. It's a really nice battle trick in a battle deck. It's pretty good. Okay, for the spells, I am playing 3 Book of Moon, 2 Shrink. Shrink's great, awesome card. It either protects your GBs from bottomless or lets you attack over their monsters. Whereas most other cards that could be in this slot, like Smashing Ground, Wabaku, stuff like that, they only do one thing. This does either or, so it's very flexible. Only reason why it's not an auto 3 of is because it does always lose the Honest and Collude. That's only reason why I'm not just playing the full set. 1 MST. That's it for the spells. It's just these 6. I still don't play Heavy Storm. Don't need it, don't want it. I'm a back row deck at the end of the day, so yeah. And also I'd rather not get Starlight Roaded. So there's that. For the traps, I'm on triple Dust Tornado, triple Deep Prison, 2 Bottomless, 2 Compulsory, 2 War Chariot. Just 2. Because the decks that lose to this already are some of your best matchups. Didn't think it was necessary to really lean into the third. I can always side it, which is exactly what I do. 2 plays just fine. The biggest reason for 2 is the Blackwing matchup. Versus Blackwing, they naturally play around War Chariot. And, I mean, of course, you still would like to see at least one of these, because there are some lines that it's stopping, but you never want to draw both of them. So when you play 3, it just increases the chances of seeing using multiples, which can sometimes cost the game, which is Blackwing. So I like that too. It's good enough. Solemn, Mirror Force. Mirror Force was not in my list originally. Some of you might remember that. At the time, I wanted to make my list as Starlight Road proof as possible. But between this, Heavy Storm, and Tori, Mirror Force is the only one that doesn't blow up my own cards in the process. And I get to choose when I flip this, because so the biggest thing was without the card, you lose a lot of games to Thought Ruler and Titanium. Games you should have otherwise won. So that was enough to convince me to play Mirror Force again. And a lot of the times, 9 times out of 10, I'm just using this as a 4th D prison. I don't really have to go plus with it or get greedy. It's really just a glorified Sakuretsu armor. That's really what it is. Call of the Haunted, Starlight Road, Trap Does Shoot, and 1 Legacy of Yatagarasu, making this a 41 card deck. So it's 41 with Legacy, but in reality, it's still 40 because Legacy is a blank card. It's not a real card. It's just a placeholder more than anything else. The reason why I've deck built this way is because in some matchups, I find myself having to bring in an additional normal summon or 2. And it made much more sense to increase the deck count versus trying to increase the monster count, but still keeping it at 40. So I decided to put in the Legacy because playing this as the 41st doesn't make the deck any more or less consistent, but allows me to, in some matchups, bring it out and bring in like another normal summon, another GB, and just play with a 41st card post side. That's the logic behind it. And then of course, Legacy has the whole it baits out Raikos, baits out Heavy Storm, so it has other applications. But yeah, it's that was the logic behind it. That's the main deck. So for the side deck, we'll go ahead and pull that out. I am side decking a Secutor. Originally, this was in my main deck, but eventually got moved into the side because, yes, there are some matchups where if you hit them with Secutor, the game is over. This is stuff like Frog Hero, Amaryllis, Lightsworn, Dragon Turbo. You can just turbo out Secutor and immediately win because they don't play enough interaction to stop something like this. But in other matchups, it is a liability more often than not. Against Blackwings, Hero Beat, and Value Turbo. It's a liability. It's almost never going to go off against them. And you really can't afford a brick in those matchups. You want all your cards to be live. So I still wanted this in my deck due to the raw power of Secutor. So it just made more sense to side it as like a bomb against everything else. Another Homplemus to help improve the Blackwing and Hero matchup. 1 Cyber Dragon. Just 1. The card's very good, of course. But there's some issues. So obviously this card is fantastic against Machina, but I don't really think Machina is a matchup GB struggles versus. It's by no means a walk in the park, but it's really not a terrible matchup. I actually think it's one of your better matchups. So I don't really miss the second copy of Sidra. I think the 1 is fine there. Really, the issue was versus Blackwing. I think Sidra is good against Blackwing, but at the same time, they're going to want to bring in all copies of their Royal Oppressions against you. So it doesn't make sense to side multiple copies of a card that loses to the card you're already very weak against. Didn't make a whole lot of sense. So knowing that, I decided to trim Sidra to 1. It's good enough, but that's how I came to the 1 copy. 1 Warrior Lady. This card's very good. It's extremely good, actually. Especially in this deck. Because anytime you set a monster, your opponent has to respect that it's Homplemus. So when your opponent goes to play around Homplemus by making a monster bigger than 21, usually that's an extra deck monster, you can just reveal this and banish it. Very simple. And I like this a lot more than Snowman Eater because you don't really benefit from having the snowman just sitting there. You can't do anything with the body. You can't synchro. You can't sack with it. It has serial attack. You can't even attack with it. Doesn't really do anything there. Banishing with Warrior Lady is always going to be more important. And then, of course, Warrior Lady does have 1500 attack. So, yeah, that's how I came to this. 2 Ancient Forest, amazing card. It's basically the Gladiator Beast field spell. 1 Smashing Ground, great card. I like this card a lot as a 1 of. It helps out versus Titanial and the Amaryllis matchup. It helps versus Hero Beat, and it helps versus Blackwing. Anytime you out the Blackwing monster, you're also playing around Icarus and Kalut that way, which is very good. And it also helps anytime they have a big monster backed up by Oppression. It's a very clean out to that. Twister, an additional out to our Oppression. A bit narrow, but considering the card it's meant to out, I think it's worth the slot as a 1 of. The 3rd copy of Compulsion War Chariot. I wouldn't main either one of these as the 3rd copy. I feel like that's way too much, so that's why I side them. This card's very good. I'm a huge fan of it. I've been playing this since February. Pole Position. Fantastic card. I'm a huge fan of this card. It was in my list originally. Some of you might remember that. But it did end up getting moved into the side. Because I ended up trimming the deck count from the main. So I still wanted the card. So that's why it's in my side deck now. But yeah, this card basically just helps you in the Frog Hero matchup, just to avoid your guys, protect your guys from getting, enemy controllered, soul exchanged, brain controlled. If they start going after your back rows with the Monarch effects, you just blow them out there. And 3 Trap Hole. We're really giving Blackwing the middle finger here. Blackwing is the most challenging matchup, so I really wanted to lean into that as much as possible. And Trap Hole, it's basically a turn skip versus Blackwing. So post side, I'm going to have 3 Trap Hole and the 2 Bottomless. That's 5 turn skips essentially against the matchup. And then of course the 5 outs to Oppression, the multiple battle traps. I am coming very prepared for the Blackwing matchup. Okay, that's the main side. The extra deck is nothing to really talk about, but you have 3 Hercs, 3 Geyserus, 3 Chimeratex, 3 Stardust, and 3 Ab-Zero. I can't even make this, but I don't need to. Yeah, I just wanted to keep it simple. And some tokens. Alright. But yeah, that's the deck, guys. I will be at RBET New York. Things are looking very good for that trip. And please, please feel free to leave comments down below. Any sort of questions, I'll answer them. I'm always very engaged with the other GB players. But yeah, hope you guys enjoy, and I'll be seeing y'all later.